The great hall of Frostmoor Castle had never felt so cold. Hundreds of pack members stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the high stone arches, their breath forming small clouds in the chill air, waiting for the words that would change everything. Elena Marlowe stood at the center of the hall, her spine straight, her chin lifted, though her heart was breaking apart inside her chest. Beside the throne stood Damien Voss, the Alpha King of Frostmoor, the man she had loved since the day their souls had bonded 3 years ago. He would not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the woman standing just behind his shoulder, a woman with golden hair and a smile that never seemed to reach her eyes, Serafina Cole. "Elena Marlowe," Damien said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "As Alpha King of Frostmoor, I hereby declare our mate bond severed. You are no longer Luna of this pack." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Elena felt the words strike her like physical blows, one after another. She had known this moment was coming, had felt it building for months, as Serafina wormed her way deeper into Damien's life, whispering doubts into his ears, turning him against the woman who had once been his entire world. But knowing something was coming, and living through it, were two very different things. "Damien," Elena said quietly, refusing to let her voice shake, "look at me. Look at what she has done to you." For one brief moment, something flickered behind Damien's eyes, a shadow of the man she had married beneath the autumn moon, the man who had promised to protect her forever. But then Serafina's hand touched his arm, and the shadow vanished as quickly as it had come. "You have until sunset to leave Frostmoor territory," Damien said, his voice flat and distant now, as though reciting words that belonged to someone else. "Do not return." Elena did not cry. She would not give Serafina the satisfaction. Instead, she turned and walked out of the hall with her head held high, her footsteps echoing against the stone floor, even as every eye in the room watched her go. Only when she passed through the great doors and into the cold morning air did she allow herself one single tear, which she wiped away before anyone could see. She left Frostmoor with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small pouch of silver her mother had given her years ago, for emergencies. She had never imagined this would be the emergency her mother meant. The neutral lands beyond Frostmoor's borders were wild and unforgiving, home to no pack, ruled by nothing but wind and stone. Elena wandered for days, surviving on berries and whatever small game she could catch in her wolf form, sleeping in hollow logs and beneath overhanging rocks. The rejection had done more than break her heart. It had weakened the bond between her human and wolf sides, leaving her exhausted and vulnerable in ways she had never experienced. On the 7th day, her strength finally gave out. She collapsed near a frozen stream at the edge of the Ashford territory, her body too weak to shift back to human form, her vision blurring at the edges. The last thing she remembered before darkness took her was the sound of heavy paws approaching through the snow, and a low, rumbling growl that was not threatening, but concerned. When Elena woke, she was lying on a bed of soft furs inside a warm den carved into the mountainside. A fire crackled nearby, and the smell of roasted meat filled the air. She tried to sit up, but a firm hand gently pressed her shoulder back down. "Rest," said a deep voice. "You have been through something terrible. Your body needs time." Elena turned her head and saw him for the first time. Cale Ashford. She had heard whispers of him before, the lone alpha who ruled the Northern Territory without a pack, who had turned away every offer of alliance from neighboring kingdoms, including, once, an offer from Frostmoor itself. He was tall, with dark hair and eyes the color of a winter storm, and though his expression was guarded, there was nothing cruel in it. "Where am I?" Elena asked, her voice hoarse. "Safe," Cale answered simply. "You collapsed at my border. I could smell that you were pack-broken. It happens to wolves who have been rejected by their mates. It nearly killed you." Elena closed her eyes, shame and grief washing over her again. "I did not choose this." "I did not think you did," Cale said. "Nobody chooses to be broken." Over the following weeks, Elena slowly regained her strength under Cale's care. He was not warm in the way Damien had once been, not full of easy smiles and gentle words, but there was a steadiness to him that Elena found she needed more than anything else. He did not pity her. He did not ask her to explain herself. He simply gave her space to heal, and slowly, she began to trust him. It was Kale who first noticed something unusual about her. One evening, as Elena practiced shifting between forms in the training yard behind his den, he stopped in the doorway and watched with narrowed eyes. "Your wolf," he said slowly. "It is not an ordinary wolf." Elena, still catching her breath from the shift, looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" "There is an old bloodline," Kale explained, stepping closer. "Spirit wolves, they were called generations ago. Wolves whose power was tied not to dominance or inheritance, but to their own inner strength. It was said the bloodline had died out, but I have seen enough shifts in my life to know what I just saw was not ordinary." Elena stared down at her own hands, trembling slightly. "That cannot be true. I have never been powerful. I was always lesser. Even Damien used to say my wolf was weak." "Perhaps," Kale said carefully, "your wolf was never weak. Perhaps it was simply suppressed. A dominant mate can do that, whether he means to or not. Bonds are not always gentle things." The realization settled over Elena slowly, like the first snowfall of winter. For 3 years, she had believed herself weak, because Damien had made her feel that way. Again and again, in small moments she had never questioned. Now, standing in the cold training yard with a man who owed her nothing and asked for nothing in return, she began to wonder who she might have been if she had never been made to feel small at all. "Will you teach me?" she asked. "To understand what I am?" Kale studied her for a long moment. "It will not be easy. Spirit wolves must earn their strength. There are no shortcuts." "I have nothing left to lose," Elena said. "I would rather struggle toward something than remain broken forever." And so, under the pale winter sun, Kale began to train her. Not as a mate, not as a Luna, but as a fellow wolf who deserved to understand her own power. Elena spent long days learning to master her shifts, to control the strange, silvery energy that pulsed beneath her skin whenever her wolf rose close to the surface. There were times she wanted to give up, when her body ached, and her spirit felt too tired to continue. But Kale never let her quit, and slowly, painfully, she grew stronger. Months passed. Elena's wolf grew larger, more radiant, until even Kale admitted he had never seen anything like it. Her fur shimmered faintly silver in moonlight, and her eyes carried a light that seemed to come from somewhere deep within, rather than merely reflecting the world around her. She was no longer the fragile, rejected Luna who had collapsed at Kale's border. She had become something new entirely. Meanwhile, far away in Frostmoor, the kingdom was beginning to crumble. Serafina Cole had wasted no time consolidating her hold over Damien. She whispered constant doubts into his ears, convincing him that his advisors could not be trusted, that his old friends were plotting against him, that only she truly understood what he needed. One by one, Damien pushed away the people who had once supported him, until he was surrounded almost entirely by Serafina's influence. What Damien did not know was that Serafina came from a rival bloodline, one that had lost its claim to power generations ago when her ancestors were defeated by Damien's own family. Her plan had never been love. It had been revenge, patient and quiet, built across years of careful positioning, and Damien had walked directly into her trap. The pack began to notice the changes. Harvests were mismanaged. Alliances with neighboring territories grew strained. Damien, once known for his fairness and strength, grew distant and short-tempered, prone to outbursts that unsettled even his most loyal warriors. Whispers began to spread among the pack members, quiet conversations held in corners and doorways. They missed their true Luna. They missed the stability Elena had once brought to the kingdom, a steadiness that Serafina had never managed to replicate despite all her charm. Elena knew nothing of this at first. She was too focused on her training, on rebuilding herself from the ground up. But one evening, a traveling merchant passing through Ashford territory mentioned rumors of unrest in Frostmoor, and Kale brought the news to her immediately. "You do not have to care what happens there," Kale said carefully, watching her reaction. "You owe that kingdom nothing." "I know," Elena said softly. "But the pack members are not to blame for what Damien and Serafina have done. Many of them were kind to me. Many of them deserve better than what is happening to their home." Kale nodded slowly. "Then perhaps it is time you returned. Not as someone seeking revenge, and not as someone seeking to reclaim what was taken from her, but as someone who has become strong enough to stand on her own, regardless of what anyone else decides. Elena looked up at him, something steady settling in her chest. "Will you come with me?" "I will," Cale said simply. "Not because Frostmoor needs saving, but because I do not believe you should have to face it alone. Not this time." They left for Frostmoor 3 days later, traveling through the same neutral lands where Elena had once nearly died, though this time the journey felt entirely different. She was not the broken woman who had fled the kingdom months earlier. She walked now with purpose, her silver wolf padding quietly beside Cale's own powerful form, 2 alphas moving together through the frozen wilderness. They arrived at the gates of Frostmoor, just as dawn broke over the horizon, the sky painted in soft shades of pink and gold. Word had already reached the pack somehow, as word always does, and by the time Elena and Cale reached the castle grounds, a crowd had gathered, murmuring in astonishment at the sight before them. Elena Marlowe, once rejected and cast out, stood tall and radiant, her presence carrying a quiet strength that had never been there before. Beside her stood Cale Ashford, an alpha whose power was unmistakable even to those who had never met him, his loyalty to Elena evident in every protective step he took near her side. Damien emerged from the castle, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and something that looked almost like grief. Behind him, Seraphina's composed smile faltered for just a moment before she quickly rearranged her features into something warmer, more welcoming, though her eyes remained sharp and calculating. "Elena," Damien said, his voice quieter than the commanding tone he had used the day he rejected her. "You came back." "I did not come back for you," Elena said clearly, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "I came back because this pack deserves to know the truth about what has been happening within these walls." Seraphina's mask slipped further, just enough for a few sharp-eyed pack elders to notice. "I do not know what she means," she said quickly, but her voice wavered. Cale stepped forward, his presence alone silencing any doubt in the crowd. "We have proof," he said calmly, "gathered over the past months from travelers and traders who witnessed the truth of what has happened here. Seraphina Cole's bloodline was defeated generations ago by Damien's own family. Her presence here was never about love, it was about reclaiming what she believed was stolen from her ancestors." Gasps spread through the crowd. Damien turned slowly to look at Seraphina, whose confident expression had finally cracked entirely, revealing the calculating coldness beneath. "Is this true?" Damien asked quietly. Seraphina said nothing, and her silence answered the question more completely than any words could have. The pack elders moved quickly, escorting Seraphina away under guard, her schemes finally unraveling in the light of dawn. Damien stood alone before Elena, the weight of his mistakes settling heavily upon his shoulders. "I was a fool," he said quietly. "I let her convince me that you were the problem, when the truth was that I simply could not see past my own pride." Elena studied him for a long moment, searching for the anger she had expected to feel, the satisfaction of seeing him finally understand what he had lost. But instead, she found only a quiet sense of peace. "I forgive you, Damien," she said gently. "Not because I wish to return to what we had, but because I no longer need your forgiveness, or your rejection, to know my own worth. I have found that on my own." Damien's eyes widened slightly, understanding dawning across his features. "You are not coming back." "No," Elena said softly. "I have become someone new, someone I am proud of, and I intend to continue becoming that person, wherever that path may lead me." The crowd watched in respectful silence as Elena turned away from the throne she once might have shared, walking instead toward the rising sun, with Cale steady at her side. She did not look back, not out of anger, but because she no longer needed to. Her future stretched ahead of her now, open and unwritten, filled with possibilities that belonged entirely to her. As the golden light of dawn spread fully across Frostmoor, illuminating the ancient stone walls and the quiet, hopeful faces of the pack, Elena Marlowe walked forward, not as anyone's rejected Luna, but as herself, whole and unafraid, ready to discover exactly who she was meant to become.